we really have to return Amna back for the nightly news tonight, back to Washington. So that is our promise to PBS NewsHour in exchange for having her with us here today. So I just want to say this Fireside Chat is a particular honor for us here at Harvard. This is a combination of many things that have come together. And first, I just want to say, Amna, it's really special that you're here with us today. Oh. Amna and I met when we were 20 years younger. But she looks
five.
We were five at the time. But she looks just the same. And I just want to say, Amna, you are, it's been an incredible both role model, colleague to watch you. The barriers this woman has broken to get into primetime journalism and media. Thank you for everything that you do.
That's very kind. Thank you. It's a real honor to be here. Thank you so much.
All right. I'm not going to steal her thunder because she gets paid literally to do this kind of work. So, Ms. Amna Nawaz, the floor is yours.
Fatima, thank you so much. First of all, can we just give it up for Fatima and the forces that pulled this entire room together? Such an incredible gathering. And I'm honored to be here, really, truly, because I get to talk to these gentlemen. We're going to be talking about the politics of centering women and girls in policy and practice. I'm going to give brief introductions for our guests here. And just a reminder, I'm going to moderate this conversation for about 30 minutes or so, and then I'm going to open up to the room for Q&A, so have your questions ready. I'm so pleased to be joined by His Excellency, Mr. Patrick Achi, the former Prime Minister of Côte d'Ivoire from March 2021 to October 2023. Prior to his appointment as Prime Minister, he served for years as Executive Secretary of the National Council for Economic Policy. He also previously served as Minister of Economic Infrastructure, and before that, he was in the private sector. Now, of course, he's a Senior Fellow here at the Harvard Center for International Development. Please join me in welcoming him. And also with us is His Excellency, Dr. Omar Al-Razaz, former Prime Minister of Jordan from 2018 to 2020. He also previously served as Minister of Education and Director of Jordan's Social Security Corporation, as well as Director of the World Bank of Lebanon. Before that, he is currently a Senior Fellow at the Middle East Initiative at the Harvard Kennedy School. Welcome to you as well.
Thank you.
So before we jump into the policy details and your own experiences, I need to point out the obvious here, which is that we're having a conversation on centering women and girls with two men, which may seem a curious choice, but hear me out here. As of fall of 2023, there were only 13 women leaders in the world, and about half of those were in developing nations. So we know what's true here. If we're going to have major policy and political breakthroughs at the very top, we need not only women in those positions, but we need men to be part of that solution. And today, we have a unique opportunity to hear from two men who have been at that position at the very top, to hear how they made decisions, what challenges they ran into, and what they might do differently if they had to do it again. So let's jump right in. Prime Minister Razaz, let's talk about the idea of participation of women in political roles in particular, because there's some success there in your tenure. In 2018, you had 7 women in the 29-person cabinet. That was a record in Jordan for the most number of women in, I think that deserves some applause. How did you do it? Was that intentional? How did that come about?
Thank you, Amna. I'm delighted to be here, and I've been just watching the conversations over the last night and this morning, and it's just amazing. So thank you all for being here, and it's an honor for me to address this group. What I was trying to avoid is tokenism. Tokenism that we know on boards of trustees, in governments. So the typical tokenism is to bring one person or two and have her be a minister of a soft ministry, so maybe culture or social development. As important as these are, I believe they're completely important. But there's perception that it's a decor for the Council of Ministers. So we really wanted to push and create a new floor, and to bring in Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Information, Tourism, and most importantly, the head of the Legislative Bureau was for the first time appointed to be a woman. And that created, well, listen, I mean, I can't say I'm proud that there are 7 ministers, but what's important, and this we need to talk about, is to, as the title of this, we need to move and break through these barriers. And one day we will get to equality, but it's important to make these marks going forward.
And I want to underscore this. You said you wanted to set a new floor. So do you feel like if there are ever now fewer than 7 women in the cabinet, that becomes a problem in Jordan?
Now I'm out of government. The next government has now 7 women. So I do think that there is now the expectation that this is the floor and you need to exceed it and go beyond the tokenism that existed before.
Prime Minister Achi, what about in Côte d'Ivoire? Tell us about the landscape, about equal representation, and why it's so hard to get more women into power.
First of all, I would like to thank CID for organizing such a tremendous, fabulous event, and thank you to all of you to be there. Maybe I'll be a little bit biased on my, talk this morning because, when you're prime minister, you have a president. And the political will is extremely important when you have to take decisions. If you, you and the president, I totally, have different view on what you should do, it makes things different. It happened that my head of state, was appointed by UN Women as he or she, meaning he's being recognized as someone who really was a leader in women transformation within the society and mainly closing the gender equality. His wife had also an NGO, and this NGO was really fighting to promote women and child. So when you such an environment and you're prime minister, the pressure comes first from the top. It makes things much easier. Second bias, myself, for family reasons, I was raised by my grandma until 5 years old. Until 5 years old, I had to be brought to her. She was living in a very remote location, no electricity, no water, no school, no health center. And, I was spending like every day on her back as she was doing every single thing that you might imagine in, life there, from cooking, from education, from health, from, cleaning, food, everything you will imagine. And I got out of that with the feeling that, I don't see life without a woman. A woman is so important in a daily life. She's so strong. She's so courageous, I guess when I look at back home in that time, I seldomly see what men were doing. Because women were doing everything. Every single thing that you need to be living was done by women. And because of that, we could have life. So now, being a prime minister in a government, having the pressure of my top boss, and having gone through that, I felt like, it was my moment to do something. So my government also has 7 women. But I should say we should not also go for tokenism. But I will bring that in the sense that you don't take women just to show up. You take women because they are going to bring an added value in your government. And to tell the truth, you could see that every single time within the government, there was an issue with promoting gender equality, with promoting, children safety. Every time there is an issue about appointing a woman that has to be approved by cabinet, all 7 of them were raising their hand. I can tell you it's quite difficult to fight against that, So you could feel, every man was there. Well, look, we don't want to have all these women against us. So it will make a huge difference. I also went through a very important issue, which was negotiating a social truce with the unions. Every 5 years, we have to negotiate with them a truce because we don't want them to go on strike. it's a nightmare, you know, in the economy, for the private sector. So it's a very tough negotiation. But I could feel that with the Minister of Public Administration being a woman, I could see these men, you know, very happy about what was going on. I mean, everything went so fast and so easy. I say now I should tell the president that never ever should I have a man Minister of Public Administration.
Let me ask you what that leadership looks like at the policy level, too, because that's where the difference is made for your populations, right? So, Prime Minister Razaz, you shared this example of trying to change maternity policy in a way that you thought would benefit women and girls in your country, but it didn't exactly have the result that you thought it would. Tell us about that.
Yes, Amna, we come into this position and we want to change everything. And a lot of the ranking of that happens is about the legislations that countries have on various issues that affect women. So one of the major issues, obviously, is maternity leave and respecting that, because in countries that don't have, that's not protected, women tend to leave their job and very often never come back. And that creates a problem. So there was a very well-intentioned law that said, okay, employers in the private sector are responsible for maternity leave, and they continue to pay salaries of women during the maternity leave. Looked perfect. In reality, what happened? The private sector started laying off women as they get married or they got pregnant. So it had, this is the counter effect, the unintended consequences of policy. You start with a legislation that's ambitious. So we really had to think about, well, how can we deal with this? Some countries, we looked at that. Some countries said private sector cannot lay off women if they get, but that's very hard to implement, and then there are all sorts of ways they can get around it. Eventually what we did, and maybe we don't have time to get to it, and eventually what we did is we introduced it as an insurance in the Social Security package. Maternity benefits, where male workers and female workers and employers make a contribution, so that it isn't a burden or additional cost on hiring a woman as opposed to hiring a man. Maternity benefits are the responsibility of society altogether. And it really made the difference that we made it this way. So that was one example of, having good intentions, but not needing to go through iterations to get it right.
But also learning from what could be seen as a failure and turning it around so it did have the intended outcome. Is that right?
That is such an important element, that we engage with that the voice, we get the voice, we engage, we are accountable, and we learn and we correct. Otherwise, there are so many laws in Jordan and elsewhere that is just ink on paper and that don't affect people's lives.
Can I ask, did you receive any pushback from men in particular when trying to push through those policies?
Let me put it this way.
I think that's a yes, by the way.
Well, there is the board of directors of Social Security has labor unions, private sector representatives, and government. So the three parties. But I would sit on that board, not a single woman, right? So when you say this is a top priority, a lot of the people look at each other and look at me and sort of. So sometimes you have to, I don't think there was strong opposition, but it's like, okay, you want to do that, go ahead. But so it really made me aware of how that we were missing the women's voice at the table when these decisions were being made. And like Patrick was saying, you need to believe in what you're doing and push it and show that this is not so unique to Jordan. This is the way to go, especially with the very, very low labor participation rate in the economy in Jordan. So these were important issues. You would need to talk to them about the economy, about growth, about things like that to sell the idea across. One thing I want to say is even if you do all of this, there are still details. I remember once a lady came to my office and She said, I'm a pensioner, I get my pension. And, but guess what happened? I said, right. She said, it goes into my husband. When we set up the pension, it went into my husband's banking account. Now he's divorcing me and remarrying using the pensions that I have in the account. So we had worked everything, but we did not realize we had to make it a requirement, a restriction that you will have to have your own banking account, and then what you do with it is your business. But so this goes to norms and social behavior, expectations, etc., that you can only learn and change in practice.
Prime Minister Achi, tell us about the policy goals for your administration as well, because sustainable development was a huge priority for you.
That's right.
And we know that resulted in better schools and better roads and better power systems for Côte d'Ivoire. But talk to us a little bit about the barriers in place for women and girls to make the most of those opportunities and how you tried to work around those.
Yes, I mean, you're right. You can make policies, but sometimes if you do not have the right infrastructure for these policies to be implemented, then it gets really difficult. The first thing we've done is within the Constitution, we have around 12 articles that deal with the gender equality. Going to promote, gender equality, going to promote women in workplace, going to tackle the issue of all form of violence against women. We have all these policies. In the health sector, childbirth is free. In the health sector, health care for children under 5 years old is free. And this is, among the worst of the situation where a woman could be, trying to give birth and not having money to go to the doctor, having your kids sick and not knowing what you should do. So once that is done, you need to have hospital, you need to have health center. So we've built, I think, quite an amount of health center to the extent that 70% of the population can access a health center 5 kilometers from their house. Talking about education, one of the biggest concerns was that the girls in the rural area, now, girls get to school quite early. At 10 years old, they are finished primary school. They should go to high school. Now, high school is in the city. You don't have high school in the rural area, in the village. Now, the mother is there and asking herself, how can I let this little, darling go out there, a place that I don't know, who will be in a house, in an apartment, to someone's place, or she'll rent it with other people? How's it going, how is she's going to do to go to school every single day, to cook, to eat? So it's like, I better have it, on my house. So she wouldn't let her go. So we went into building what we call proximity high school. So maximum 5 kilometers from the village, you should have high school. We've built quite a number of them, and we've been able to increase the rate of attendance in high school of the girl from 21 to 40%. So that makes a change. But if you don't have the infrastructure, that doesn't work, because we have also taken a policy, a law, to say school is mandatory for all kids from 6 to 16 years old. Now, once you've said that and you don't have the classroom, you don't have the school, or they can't go to the school that you've built, then that policy cannot also be implemented. You're talking about food security, because generating revenue, as you know, it's a major concern for the women in the rural area and even in the urban area. And women account for 70% of food crop. Now, once she produces the crop, hoping that she have enough seeds and fertilizer to get the right yield, how is she going to sell it retail? Now, the women are producing the food. They are selling it in the market. but to transport the food from the production area all the way to the market, women are not in the transport. Men are, being the transporter. They don't have truck. So at the end of the day, if the roads are not well maintained, the person who is doing the transport can set the price he wants. Now you have your good there, and you cannot sell it. You've worked, all year long, and that's what we call post-harvest waste, because it's just there. So transport becomes a key issue. So we work a lot on road maintenance. Electricity is a major concern because it's about safety, and it's about changing the life of the women at home. Everything become more easy, but then if you don't have access to electricity, so electricity was in the 2011 30% coverage. Today it's 86 to 90% coverage. Almost every single household can have access to electricity. Not only its safety, but also you are able to have small businesses that these women do, because they can have a refrigerator, they can have so on and so forth, and information, they can have the TV, they can have so on and so forth. It changed life. Digital changed the whole map and narrative of the African continent. You know that you have more mobile in the African continent than Europe and US together.
That's right.
But almost every single woman has a mobile phone. Whereas she didn't have a phone, she couldn't call anyone. She couldn't call her parents, her daughter, her kids. She couldn't call, to sell something. Today, all of them, the mobile phone changed totally their life. So you could see progress everywhere, but every time you make a policy, never forget that it should be accompanied by an investment in the related infrastructure.
Can I ask you briefly the same question I put to Prime Minister Razaz, which is, I'm going to assume you faced some backlash in pushing forward some of these policies. So what do you say in that room when it is all or mostly men? What's the argument you lay out to say why this is a necessary policy step?
Now, I will maybe take as an example the political area, where we have within the Constitution said that the objective was to reach an equal participation. So, member of the parliament, mayors, municipal council, regional body, regional council, senate, So it was fine for the municipal council. We went from 15 to 30% of women. For the regional council, we went to almost 15% to 30% of women, which is a big change within, the council and the representative. For the Senate, we went, I think, from 11 to 20%, 25% of women. Now, when it came to the parliament, now it's not an election according to a list. It's an individual election in a specific locality. Now, you say we want 30% women. Now, we're asking the political party to come with a minimum of 30% candidate to the legislative election.
And did they do that?
I mean, now the problem is that what we faced was, you want to win the election. Now, it's not about bringing a woman that is going to lose. Because in the parliament, you want to win majority in the parliament, so you want to have someone who is going to win. Now, that's where you see that policy sometimes has to do with reality, which means you don't overnight, because you have decided that 30% of the parliament should be women, you don't overnight get the women who are known in a local area, who've been trained, who have the leadership, and who have a chance to win. Now, you say 30%, and you lose 30% of your share in parliament, you do not have any more majority. So we had to adapt in the area where we have a list of members of the Congress to be elected, like 5 or 6, we took a third. But where we had one, we said, okay, for this time, we're going to let the political party get us as many women as they can. And 5 years' time, we'll have the time to get everything set up, and we'll be able to have the proper women to be able to implement that. So sometimes you really want to do that, but the reality is that It's not possible. You have to wait.
Let me ask about that reality, though, Prime Minister Razaz, because how much of this kind of underscores everything we're talking about here, how much of this is about cultural and social norms in a nation?
Obviously, we live within cultures, within norms, but it's very dangerous to think that these norms and this culture is immutable, that doesn't change. It is changing. We are, by introducing laws and regulations, you're changing, but also by focusing on role models, in reality, it's changing. I'll give you an example of a woman. Her husband died. He was a plumber, and she didn't have a source of income. She took on his set of plumbing and started doing plumbing work in their neighborhood. And guess what? It made so much sense because during the day she can go to another house that has a woman in it where had it been a man going to that house, it would have been a bit awkward in the culture. So she started having a broader clientele, and every now and then she would be mocked, kind of as a woman plumber. But guess what? It's that mocking that reflects anxiety among those who are seeing this, the norms and this changing. And now, this, among other similar examples, is happening and being supported. She and a group of plumbers were supported by the Millennium Corporation. So you can see that, but what is needed? I mean, we all know how to do things top down, right? We look at best practices in legislation and we sit in we're not as good as looking at things that are coming bottom up and learning from them and supporting them. In Jordan, there's a movement called Barefoot Feminism. And I love it because it looks at these examples and says, okay, how do we scale this up? And a lot of you are doing exactly that, but not enough of sort of looking from the silos and really allowing it to scale up and connect with other initiatives being done on the ground.
I have just a couple of minutes left with both of you before we open it up to the room, so I'll ask you to be brief as I turn to this last question, which is just to say you have both now been spending time here at Harvard. You've been reflecting and thinking and having conversations and learning, and I just wonder, as you look back at your time in office, knowing everything you do now, would you do anything differently when it comes to these issues?
Just one point before I get to that. As far as the norms we're talking about, the way we are raised, you raise a boy, you get close to the kitchen, your mom tells you, this is not your place. You get to the, we're going to fetch water, maybe I can go with you and my sister, that is not your place, this is not your role. From the very childhood, you put that in your mind. But at the same time, the girl also is put in her mind that you have to be in the kitchen. So now when you get to a point that you have to go to gender equality, how do you fight against this very thing inside you, grass-rooted, and then, so it's a major issue, We have land right issue, back home, the women are, growing food, and the husband die, and they say, the land is a family land. You don't own that. It changes all perspectives. So there's a lot to do. But to come to, what we learn at Harvard, and that could be maybe a major game changer if we go back home and we had to do things. I think that I've never taken a gender class. It doesn't look, particularly something specific. But how many men ever found themselves one day in a class where for 1 hour we're going to talk about gender? So that's what happened to me. The Prime Minister, I got into that room, and after a minute, I was wondering if it were really my place, because I would see all these women around, no men. So what am I doing here? But then
Had you ever before been in a room where you were the only man and it was all women?
Never. I mean, never. So that's why I told you I was about, is it really my place?
Yeah.
Maybe, there's something wrong about
Yeah.
this. And then the professor who should be here told me, now you know what it is to feel like you're being the only one. You see just the women, you're there, and you know that when she gets into the room and it's all men, that's the way she feels. Is it my place? Should I take the floor? So now I took this class. So I had to sit there for an hour, listen to them, which I was not used to. I couldn't, live in the middle of, Then as I sat there and listening to them and listening to the faculty giving the class, I started to learn things. I said, gee, maybe I didn't listen enough to these women back home. Because I could see that there were things they were talking about that was exactly the same thing back home. But I didn't have that chance to have them talking to me. Maybe, I didn't listen to them, and then I went back to my daughter. I said, look, this is what happened, at Harvard, and, what's wrong with you, girl? You say, yeah, now you're learning, because we're talking to you. You don't listen, so we don't talk anymore. We don't talk anymore. Because now you're at Harvard, with them you're listening. Thanks God.
Round of applause for his daughter, please. Yeah. Prime Minister Razas, what would you do differently?
This is Mara. This is a class that I took.
I couldn't agree more on the issue of listening. I thought I was a good listener, but, doing it again, I would do 10 times as much on all issues. We tend to think of communication as a one-way street. It's not communication, it's sort of mandates coming down. So that's one. Two, what I've learned is how much so there are differences between countries. Jordan ranks number 66 out of 146 countries on the WEF indicator of education. So we're doing relatively well in making sure, and there are more women than men, there are more females than males in higher education, in universities, and in the sciences.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now, that's wonderful, but it is not reflecting in the market, in the labor market. Participation in the labor market is low. So we really have to understand why that is. And different countries have different. Education is a prerequisite. And if you don't have it, you have to make sure you have it. And you have it in a way that really helps the next generation also understand the changing needs. The last thing I'll say, this is at the local level. It is amazing to be here, look at the world, and realize how ineffective, this is saying best, are global organizations these days. With climate change, with forced dislocation of people, the pandemics that are happening, just I'm sorry to say it, a lot of the formal institutions, the UN type institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, these are creatures of the 20th century. They are failing at dealing with the 21st century issues. And what I feel strongly about is we need to start imagining a different global order that is just, fair, and sustainable and inclusive, and make that voice change the way that current global order that we see, that where issues vetoes on things that are happening in Gaza, things that are what we see in Sudan, what we see in forced migration, this cannot continue. Neither women or men or children are protected under the current global system of so-called public goods. We are not providing these public goods.
All right, with that, let's open it up to the room. Anyone with questions, please feel free to raise your hand now. We'll send a microphone over to you. Otherwise, I will keep going because I have several more. Here we have one right here, and then we'll go to the young woman in the back next. I will start here in the front.
Thank you. It was really wonderful to hear both your perspectives. And getting through this morning and through this panel, it seems that there is an elephant in the room, and that elephant is really the politics of fascism, the rise of autocracy looming. If we take a look at Freedom House, the numbers of countries that seem to be succumbing to a very fatalistic approach to politics. And this we know is a terrible thing for women, terrible thing for freedom. And I just wanted to hear your comments about the messaging that we need to put forth in this moment.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
that. Who'd like to tackle that one?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he bring up the points that you raised that has to do with women in politics, women being educated, because you have to be in a position to be influencing, you know, the course of your of life, of politics in your country. You know. We're talking about the conflict and the war. You know, we happen to witness back home a civil war. I mean, who's suffering from civil war? Women. At every single stage, you cannot even imagine. You displace, you have to feed the kids, there's health issue, we don't even talk about education, it's survival. And who is at the forefront of that fight? Women. They are the ones who are concerned. Now, when we're talking about peace talks, about peace agreement, you look at around the table, none of them are there. Because if they were there, they are concerned. They don't want that anymore. They are the ones who suffered the most from that. Yet, when we're talking about that, it's a bunch of men with their ambition, with their ego, that they put in the front to make this negotiation. So bringing the women within politics, but sitting into places where they can give a couple of thoughts on how things should move forward to have peace, to have democracy, to have human rights, to have rule of law, is the way forward.
Anything you'd add, Prime Minister Assas?
Let me just add one example, and this is a great question because we are at a crossroad. We are at a crossroad as humanity, as a globe. We have a choice. We either build walls and trenches, as the US is doing in the South and Europe is doing, especially with migration. Let me talk about displacement. And we either build these walls and trenches, or we build roads and bridges. And if we leave things the way they are, it'll go towards walls and trenches. Unless there is a global system that identifies these problems, these threats, and addresses them in a holistic way. And I'll stop there. But we are facing stark choices that lend themselves to this populist rhetoric that makes the other our enemy as opposed to our partner in a world that has really become a village, whether we like it or not. Anything we do is affecting others. So if we start with that, I think we can get to a better outcome.
Thank you for that. I think there's a question right here in the front. If you can just stand up and project, we might not even need the microphone. Oh, coming your way.
Thank you. My name is Anna Pantelic from MIT D-Lab. My question for you, as we've seen, all of this progress can be very shaky, and it's often overwhelming, all of the challenges that we face, the statistics that we see. So as individuals who have been in a situation of power, how do you think about what to prioritize, what issues to focus on, and how to make sure that that legacy is sustainable in the long term? Thanks.
Thank you. Would you like to begin?
Thank you. I think it is very important when you are at that position. Obviously, there are so many issues, and there is a temptation to prioritize one and finish it. And my approach, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, is to start on all these fronts. Because it's a bit of like planting a seed. Yes, you don't know whether it might not be finished. And this is against politics, by the way. Politics is about short-termism. You want to do something and finish it in 3 months so that you can run for elections. So but to the extent possible, starting the wheel to turn on all of these areas creates a dynamism that you hope, and I've seen it pick up in many, many cases. I've seen it die in others. To me, health insurance, early childhood development is crucially important. And we talk about equal opportunity. It cannot be that if you live in Amman, in the capital, you send your kids to private KG, but if you don't have access to that. Those 3 years are some of the most important in the development of the brain.
So planting lots of seeds.
Yeah,
Is that your approach?
Yeah, I think that maybe I had that until I went to the Harvard Museum yesterday evening, because I felt like everything that is threatening life, maybe I should tackle first. Violence against women, sexual harassment, rape. I mean, everything that traumatize, and little girls, women, back home we've set a gender office in the police stations, because when going and talking about it to people is very difficult for the women. The environment is such that she just leave that alone, and then she can't talk about it. It's worse, it's traumatizing, and you cannot even talk about it. You say, yes, I've rule, I've laws against that, but she wouldn't even go all the way there, see a man, and talk to him about like her private life. You have the environment, you have the cultural norm, like you used to say, but I think that I will for sure tackle every single thing that touches, your body, your survival, your trauma, so that, you're still alive to fight the fight.
Thank you for that. I don't want to ignore this side of the room. How about right here in the middle? Yes.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Nawaz, to give me the opportunity. I would just like to bring a contribution and congratulate those two gentlemen, two former prime ministers, because being at the position of power, of decision in the political arena is one thing. Being out of it and criticizing is one thing. I had the opportunity, and I'm still Minister of Gender, Family and Children of the Ivory Coast, and I was appointed by the Prime Minister, Patrick Achi. I really like to congratulate him and his fellow Prime Minister, because when you are at that position, everything becomes a priority. What to do first, second, and third. And at that level, there is one thing that is needed. That's why I really like to congratulate Ashley. It's the woman solidarity and creating a réseau, being in touch to make our own fight. Positive masculinity by men is one thing, but women being together to reach the destination we want is one other thing. And I think it's Marcy who's just spoke. She was telling me yesterday, still in the state of New York, they are still working hard to change the law on women equality. So going from America to Asia to Africa, we need to make a think tank where women will address whatever is their problem first, especially in the political arena. And after gaining that fight, everybody can go back to the church and we can fight on the political ground. And the men have been working in Africa, and especially in Ivory Coast. The Prime Minister did a lot for women to have access to credit in the rural area, to also help get the food sovereignty after the crisis in Ukraine and Russia. The price of everything kind of went up, and it was those same women suffering, and he did came out with a tremendous and gorgeous plan for women. And today, I can tell you in that area, women are doing good. Thank you, Prime Minister Patrick Achi. And we see that you are continuing, and we are hoping that you come with more solutions. Thank you.
He is indeed, as is Prime Minister Razaz. Thank you so much for that very thoughtful note. In the interest of time, we are going to have to end it there. I want to thank everyone in the room for bringing your thoughtful questions. Please join me in thanking both Prime Minister Achi and Prime Minister Razaz. Thank you.
So she didn't ask her our last question anymore, how we reflect.
So as we wrap up, a couple of things. Well, first, thank you both. The two of you, I want to just tell you one thing about both Prime Minister Achi and Prime Minister Razaz. There's a lot of conferences out there. All of you know this. They're invited to speak all the time. They took so much time this entire semester to prep, to learn. They've been reading, including books like Invisible Women.
Invisible Women. I highly recommend it, by the way. Nicola Perez.
They have put so much thought, prep into the learning agenda on the road to GEM. And so I just want to say this is not about a 45-minute conversation. This is about what lifelong learning looks like, and we're never too old, we're never too smart, we're never too accomplished to do that. And they model that for us with GEM24. So we are really honored.
Thank you.
And I personally had a really fun time getting to do dry runs with two prime ministers. Amna, you are a role model. You're an inspiration. We are.
Oh, thank you so much.
I have 3 daughters. One day they could be Amna Nawaz.
It'll be better. That's the hope.
So thank you. It is so special that you came to do this with us. I wanted to tell PBS Nightly News that we're trying to keep her here. So please come back. Please come back.
I'd be honored. I tell you, I do a lot of gatherings, convenings, panels. This is an incredibly special group, an incredibly special gathering. You don't see conversations like this in many places, and that's a testament to both people willing to have the hard conversations and reflect on these issues and the people who do the convening. So thank you to all of you, and thank you to you as well.
All right, and so right before we break, I have a special thing I want to do. Indulge me for 60 seconds. We're going to break for lunch. Lunch is set up outside, so please enjoy I want to really thank our Harvard University Dining Services. HUDS has gone above and beyond for all of you, so please be extra kind, gracious, and grateful as you enjoy what they've prepared. There's 2 lines on each side, so 2 times 2 by 4. So enjoy lunch. Bring it back as quickly as possible. We have an incredibly special lunch for you. We're going to have lunch with our grandmothers today, because we're going to talk about women and girls. We're going to talk about the role grandmothers play to keep all of this running, to keep the world running. And Kaka Jolie has flown in from rural Uganda to help us with this conversation. So grab lunch quickly. We're going to start around 12:25. And to tee this up, I have one special surprise announcement. And where's Gary? Gary, you talked about men and boys also needing a support system. So we have created a little support system here actually as well. We have a special surprise because, awesome, we have a special guest for you, if you want to stand up for a second. As we think about the role of women, girls, and grandmothers, we have Asim's mom here, who is coming.
Aww.
Now, you boys have to be his support system.
Oh my God, no, I'm gonna cry. Are you kidding?
Zaida is not just Asim's mom. She's a gynecologist. She is a women leader in Pakistan. She started clinics in rural Nigeria. She has worked all areas of Pakistan. She has helped empower so many women, girls, and families. She's a leader in her own right. And thank you all for an incredible morning. Thank you to our panelists. Please enjoy lunch, and we'll get started as soon as possible. Try to be in our seats by 12:25. Thank you so much.